Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather Torres. I'm the program manager for the Entertainment Business Master's program. And we have an amazing guest here today. We're so fortunate to have him here on campus. Our guest is the founder of Forfini, Inc., which is a live event production company and brand strategy firm. He's also the founder of their biggest production, which is the Vans Warped Tour, which is the longest running North American concert tour. It draws a crowd of over 550,000 people every year. So please welcome Mr. Kevin Lyman to the stage.
Good afternoon, or evening, morning. I don't know, I'm all jet lagged out, so we'll have some fun. Good day, everyone. Thanks for having me at Full Sail. It's always awesome to come to your campus. It's nice to see the facilities here. You know, we walked in today to kind of look at we're going to do this announcement of the tour with you guys tonight, and all of a sudden it's like production and lights and video. When have you ever seen that on the Warped Tour? So it was awesome to see that this morning. So
well, we're so lucky to have you here, so thank
fun.
you so much. Just wanted to start off by asking you about how you got into live events and music. So can you start us off with that question?
Well, it's been many years, but I was going, I went to Cal Poly Pomona, which is a university in Southern California, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't really going to be a good student, I knew that. And I was actually walking through campus one day, and I heard some music off in the distance, and I wandered over, and some guys were setting up a PA system. And I just kind of started talking to them, and I kind of fell in with that crowd, and started putting on shows on campus with people, and I was the only guy with a van, so we would use my van to pile into to drive into Los Angeles during a really exciting time in music. The punk rock scene was just blossoming in LA, and we would go into town and see shows. And then I was on the ski team in college and had to raise money for the ski team, so I started blending my love of live music into putting on concerts and events.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I understand you worked on Lollapalooza too for a while, which was a huge success in the 90s, and I'm curious to know what you did with that festival and what it was like working with them.
Well, at that point I was working, I graduated college and I went to Hawaii and ran a weight loss camp for girls. It was like, and I ended up coming back and I needed a job, and that experience I had gotten in school kind of put me in a position where someone said they needed some help at a club as a stage manager. And so I went down there, and it was paying like $75 a night, and I was the only guy that didn't have to run and pay half of it to the tattoo guy down the road. And but I was working, and I built a reputation because I kind of never knew I wanted to never be that guy that burnout. You guys all go to live shows, and that person that's bumming your night out, the doorman, the sound man. I could never understand how those people became that way, because music is such an important part of my life. It's in my heart every day. I want to be stoked on it. So I knew I was going to move on, but I was working over 320 shows a year at that point.
Wow.
Running shows for a lot of promoters. I started my own production company, and I was asked because I had worked with all those bands. That was another, the Chili Peppers and Jane's Addiction, and that alternative music scene in Los Angeles was there, and I was the guy that was running all the shows. So on the first Lollapalooza, I was asked to be the stage manager of Lollapalooza in 1991. And I went in with that attitude, and I almost burned out in about 2 days. I went out there because when you work in a club, and a lot of people say, well, how do you put on these big shows? And I'm like, well, you work, in a club, you have to do so much more. It gets easier as the shows get bigger, because you just kind of tear apart the concert writer and hand it to the union chief, you hand it to the caterers. Back then, we had to do everything. So I went out there in Lollapalooza and started running around. I was trying to set up the artwork. I was doing security. And 2 days I passed out on stage, and all the old crusty crew guys were like, oh, the young kid's gone, he burned out. Well, I dragged myself up, and I made it through that tour in 91. And when I finished that tour, though, I realized that you needed, everyone was so high on that tour. It was a really exciting time. I don't know if you were at that show,
I remember it.
It was a very, we were down, and we got back, but I knew that I had to step right back into what I did. So I went right back to work in the clubs the next day. And I think you always have to remember to step back and remember where you come from.
That's amazing. So what prompted you to want to start the Vans Warped Tour, and how did that come to be? Well,
in 1995, I'd been already working in the business for about 12, 13 years. And I was pretty much at that point, a lot of you guys are probably, your parents are going, they're going to ask you, when are you going to get a real job? That's a big thing. As students I talk to, it's always like you want to go into a creative space, and especially back then. Now I think things like skateboarding are much more accepted, as well as being a musician, than they were. And it was like we were all the fringe kids and the bad kids, and in 1995, I was going to have my first daughter, Sierra now, who's a junior down at Loyola, but it was that time maybe to get that real job. I was thinking maybe I need to go get a real job and kind of, but I thought, I was sitting in the snow after doing an event. We do a lot of charity shows, and I was doing a board aid event. And I had convinced Perry Farrell to sing Mountain Song because he wasn't in Jane's Addiction, and it was Coming Down the Mountain was this awesome song. And he was in a band called Porno for Pyros. And sometimes you have that epiphany, and mine are usually like in the storm, and people are throwing snowballs, kids are piling on stage, this snowboard. And I just remember, and I go, you know what, this whole lifestyle that we grew up in Southern California where we've had punk in the backyards and put up a little mini ramp is going to grow because I had heard about the X Games. So sometimes it's opportunistic because I had heard about this X Games was going to be broadcast on television. And I said, this lifestyle that I've been living could possibly go across, grow. Now, Florida is very similar to Southern California in the sense that we are outdoors, we skate, but a lot of the country didn't know, and they didn't know about vans. It was just a different thing. So I rallied up some friends that first year. It was very quick, and it's kind of a weird day today because I woke up this morning and 21 years ago, very similar, on April 19th, 1995, the first day of the tour was going to be called The Bomb. Because back then, everything your mom and dad said, the bomb, that's the bomb. Well, that day I woke up was the Oklahoma City bombing.
Oh, wow.
So when I woke up this morning and saw what we had in Brussels, it was kind of a flashback to that moment in time. But we went out, and that's where I had to change the name, and that's where I borrowed the name Warp from a magazine at that point that was put out by Trans World Publications. I'd been helping them on all their events, and I rallied up a few bands, and I thought everyone liked eclectic music like myself because I worked in the clubs every night, so I was working with punk bands, metal bands, so I put a lineup together that year, mostly who would go with me, and that was Sublime and No Doubt and Quicksand and Orange 9mm, No Use for a Name. So it was a little too almost eclectic, and we went out on the road. And if we had called it The Bomb, it would have been The Bomb because it bombed pretty bad. We came down to Florida, and we were supposed to play all these big places, and we ended up playing the parking lots of the clubs in town and the Edge and things down here. And we made it through the first year, and luckily, and I started living my life kind of looking at the world like, wait, we do live around, we support corporations. I grew up in more that corporate America kind of vibe of skateboarding. But I started realizing we were using their products, and I said, how could I possibly go get some of this money to help me have some fun with my friends? It was basically, simple project at first, and that first, in 1996, I was broke again, back working in the clubs, trying to support, the family, and I started thinking about maybe what sponsorship was, how that could help music. Now, some people says I sold out punk rock because of that, but I realized I think I just took it to more people. And that first year, almost that branding problem, you could have a problem in life where you brand too much or you do something completely wrong to destroy a brand. Well, that second year, other bands had heard about the tour, and we got NoFX and Pennywise contacted me and wanted to be on that tour, very credible punk bands. And my ex-partner, and sometimes you have an ex-partner for a reason, had convinced me that Calvin Klein would have been a good partner for a Warped Tour. So how many of you think back in 1996, would the Calvin Klein Warped Tour still be sitting here? Right now, it would just be a bad footnote in history. And I got that lucky opportunity it was a weird phone call. They got stuck in a snowstorm. Sometimes it's about opportunity in life. And they got stuck in a snowstorm on a runway in New York, a big blizzard of 96. It's kind of they always talk about the blizzard of 96. And I got a call from Vans at that point. And I went over to Vans, and I thought they wanted to talk about my awesomely successful music festival. And they really wanted to ask me if I wanted to help them with their amateur skate program. And I had 15 minutes to convince them that no one's going to go see amateur skating unless you have music involved. And we formed this partnership 21 years ago. This will be our 22nd of summer.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So it's cool.
Great. So, you basically built this from the ground up, right? And you talked a little bit about how you just drew from every resource that you had. What are some of the biggest challenges you had with putting your festival together in the beginning?
Well, I think back then a lot of people now want to start festivals very quickly. We're a festival culture now. We're multi-generational cultural of festivals. When 91 was really, Lollapalooza was that first festival kind of idea in America. We had Woodstock, we had some of those Cal Jams, things like that, but festivals were new, but now we're multi-generational festivals. So I think some people want to accelerate that process. Almost every large festival producer went bankrupt or close to bankrupt when they started their festival. It's a weird group of people I went to college with. It was Paul Tollett, who eventually went to Golden Voice, who brought me to Golden Voice, who now started Coachella. Skip Page, who's involved with Firefly, Coachella, and all their festivals. So there was a group of guys there and girls that we all kind of loved music and have gone on to do different things. But every one of us, if you're going to do this, went out. We used that collective experience of 13 years, so I was allowed to fail. By doing good for other people and working with them and helping them with their careers. By this point, I was running the world tours for Nine Inch Nails, Stone Temple Pilots, Porno for Pyros. I was making more money than I could imagine ever and more than I do now, but I worked for 2 drug addicts and a psycho, and I didn't know which was which on any given day. So, if you surround yourself with those people, you're eventually going to become one of those people. And I decided I needed to step back, and that's when I decided for that last summer to go put out this thing called the Warped Tour. And at that point, I guess you really, as an entrepreneur, I realized that you have to be all in. There's no dabbling. Every time I dabble in business, it's kind of failed. You're kind of all in. You need to either be all in or hire someone that's all in to run your business or partner with someone so you can look at it. I'm all in on the Warped Tour. I mean, I do multiple festivals. The Mayhem Festival we just relaunched the Taste of Chaos Tour. I've had multiple things, multiple brands I've worked with. And you know what? This is the one that I'm all in on all the time. And this year, you have challenges each year. And how do you stay relevant through all this time? It's been challenging. And I think I faced some challenges last year with this tour, and I think I'm feeling pretty positive that I've tackled them head on this year, and I think tonight's a great start when we announce this lineup. People are going to get what I'm about.
That's awesome. So this is a large-scale event, huge event, right? So it relies really heavily on logistics. How do you handle unexpected things as they pop up?
Well, you have great people behind you. That's ultimately to make these things work. I have Julie, who's awesome at operations. I have Kate and Allison, who are doing our partners in sponsorship. They are nuts and bolts people. Our company is predominantly run by women, which is there's a lot of women running logistics of music festivals now. You see it across the country that they're running the festival. It's run the back ends. But they let me I'm kind of that bigger picture person, and you have people around you that are very nuts and bolts people. I still understand the nuts and bolts, but I've realized how to step back a little bit and know that they're going to get this right 95% of the time. They may argue that it's 99, but I might say 95.
Nice. So there are really too many bands to count that have gotten their start on the tour, and they've blown up into amazing things. We have Eminem, Blink-182. You mentioned No Doubt. Katy Perry was on tour with you.
Yeah.
So you've invited a lot of these people to tour with you. What are some of the things that you look for in a band when you're selecting them to go on tour with you?
Well, ultimately, early on, I was still working 300 shows a year, so I was around these bands, 3-4 bands every night in a venue, so I understood these bands, and I always look for that live band. You have to be a good live band on Warped Tour. If you're not a good live band, everyone's going to get distracted and go to 9 other things. So a live act I'm still a very live person. If you want to be a recording studio person, I am not your person to talk to. I have ADD. I'm out of there. It sounds great. Let's get it going. Let's move a show. I also got the monotony some people like. Really touring is about routine and monotony in a way. You want, when you go into arena setups and you set up the PA the same way, the lights the same way, everything. There's a lot of people like that routine. I don't like routine. So everything about the Warped Tour has kind of twisted that routine around in touring. Frustrates the hell out of backline people. They like routine, and I mess them up all day long, and they have to work at different schedules. But it's a big logistic, and the tour is the bands. For me, it's about live bands. Also, unique bands. It was early on in my career. I did a show with a band called the Black Eyed Peas. And I go, you know what? I think punk kids are going to like this, or skate kids. I always listen to skate kids. Skaters, we were always listening to an eclectic mix of music. They would listen to reggae, they would listen to punk, they would listen to hip hop. I was also around that whole scene of Los Angeles with, NWA and Public Enemy coming out, and I would produce their shows in Los Angeles, and starting to meet those artists. And one of my big mentors in life was a guy named Ice-T. He was a rapper before he was an actor. A lot of people now go, oh, that actor on Channel 4. tour? I go, no, he was actually a rapper I toured with. And he's been, you always wonder where your mentors come in. You never know where they're going to come from. And he came in 1991. When I was stage managing Lollapalooza, it was 114 degrees during rehearsals. We're outside. Nothing was working. It was the early advent of moving lights and nothing. They were shooting everywhere. The computers were melting. And this guy's sitting on the side of the stage, and I talked to him, and I go, why aren't you at the hotel with the party? There's a big party for all the artists. We're out here where he goes, you know what? I want to learn all this so I understand this. And later on, he traveled on my bus with me, and we had some great stories, which this is a PG show, so we can't really talk about it. But, Ice-T was a mentor. And, learning that we're pretty much, so I've always looked at music in a different way. Like the old punk guys would just want to work punk shows. Like I was going to get my punk rock card ripped up because I worked Motley Crue shows, and I worked Warren, I worked hair metal bands. So my tours have always been eclectic, and I listen to different things. Katy Perry got on the tour. I had written a movie called Endless Bummer about a stolen surfboard, and we wanted to get music from about that 83, 84 time period, kind of punk and things, and a guy played me an Outfield song, Lose Your Love Tonight, and I go, who is this? And he said, a girl named Katy Perry, and I said, anything else in that You're So Gay video she had out? I go, oh my God, she's punk. I want her on my tour. And when I booked her, people were like, thought it was crazy, but she was. Punk's in your heart. It's not how you look. Mm-hmm. And I think I look at it that way. So it like to be eclectic. I think throwing twists at music. Eminem starting on Warped Tour was a big thing, But I also knew about brands at that point. You had to be really careful of your brand. This was like known as a punk rock tour, and I led with Eminem, and that was the first advent of message boards on social media, and the death threats came pouring in. Later on, when I met the 12-year-old that sent them, I understood that they're mostly just that kind of thing. And you learn that your brand is really super important to certain people, and I see this now, we'll talk tonight, it's like, that you have a vision if you do something, and that vision's going to tweak and change over time. And I'm not booking necessarily the Warped Tour for myself anymore, I respect bands like Pierce the Veil and Sleeping with Sirens and Day to Remember. They're singing the same way that the Dead Kennedys sang to me, or the Circle Jerks sang to me. Those kids sing the same way. They're just as passionate. They're there. So it really hurts when someone says, oh, those bands, this. It just means that you've gotten old. That's what I just tell them. It's like you get trapped in time in music. I can't allow myself to get trapped in time in music if I'm going to continue putting on this show. Great.
Well, and you have a really diverse lineup, too. There's many different things that appeal to different people. You have rock, punk, pop, hip hop. You have a very diverse thing. And then you introduced YouTubers and comedy acts last year. So
I think, you try to, we're not going to have YouTubers this year. I think, you try things and then things evolve, and I think Warped, I was trying to be last year. I thought it was a really great lineup, but I think I was trying to be something to everyone. Mm-hmm. Warped Tour is not for everyone. It really has never been for everyone. It's kind of for a specific group of people, I like to call them the smart people, but because you have to come to the Warped Tour as a thinker. It's a thinking person show. I love going to Taylor Swift. I was blown away by the production, what she gives her fans. It was amazing. I can appreciate that. But I think Warped Tour, when you walk through those gates, we make you think before you come to the tour. Right now, people are thinking about if they're going to be doing a part of our blood drives. I wanted to change the mindset of tours because I used to work in clubs and venues, and everyone leans on each other looking at a main stage, and eventually after 7 hours of leaning on you, you want to punch the person no matter how nice the person is next to you. Warped Tour is about mixing the pot and stirring the pot. My motto, and I'd watch it, 90% of the problems are caused by 10% of the people under cover of darkness in any society. When I worked in the punk clubs, the 10% of the crowd was beating up the other 90% under cover of darkness. So you took punk, and I said, wait, people shouldn't be fearful at a show. Put it out in the sunshine. Mm-hmm. It changed it when punk rock went in the sunshine. My wife says you ruined punk. She's an old punk girl, so. But I always thought, bring it out, because those bands were singing to you. They wanted you to hear, and you wanted to hear that music because it really meant something. And if you had to worry about that 10%, let's put it out in the sunshine. Writing the schedule different every day. Mm-hmm. That goes back to 91. You learn from doing this stuff. 91 Lollapalooza, Henry Rollins, I don't know if you guys know him, he's a Black Flag. He's an amazing artist, this carpet right here, shirt off, black, search and destroy tattoo on his back, black trunks, barefoot. When Henry Rollins is on stage. And I would put him up on stage and there'd be a bunch of empty seats at an amphitheater and someone on the grass. And all I was thinking was, why can't I put him on right before Jane's Addiction tonight? He would impact these people's lives if people would see him. But people were wandering in, it wasn't that thing. So that's why I write that schedule differently, because now 90% of the audience is there at 11 o'clock in the morning because they may not want to, you want to engage them. So we engage you on the way there. You ask your friends, hey, did you bring your cans of food and our cans of food so we can all skip the line, because if you didn't bring your cans of food, I got to loan you $5 so we can get in the front. We try to engage, bring your cell phones. We try to engage the audience from year round now and make you think. When you're coming to a show, I always like to say, only people that are going to have the same experiences is if you're hooked up with your friends and you're going to do the same thing all day long. But everyone else is doing something different, so everyone has a different story to tell. And I think that's really what, the warp, my philosophy, everyone wants a different story to tell in this life. And I think it starts with going to your first music festival.
Absolutely. I've noticed that you've tried a lot of different things too, and one of the things you've tried in the last couple years is you allow a parent to come with the attendee.
Yeah.
Are you going to do that this year, and how has it worked out?
Well, the
so
parent
far?
thing came mostly, we started many, many years ago. We did a show in Montana for the Warped Tour, and my mouth gets me in trouble sometimes, as anyone might know, but I made a quote that said the only good thing to do in Montana is fishing, not punk rock. And we did that, but we had done this thing, and I was walking through the grounds, and along the fence there was a bunch of parents there with little umbrellas and sitting there, and I said, why are you, and they said, look, we don't, this is a music festival. We've never had a music festival in Montana. I'm nervous about my kids, the drugs, the things, and I'm going, well, Warp's a lot differently. So the following year, I created the tent, the Reverse Daycare Center. We call it Reverse Daycare Center. Check your parents in. We'll watch them while you go have a good time. And, that was something we came. But then, you study society as general, and we had an economic downturn. It affected down here severely with the housing and everything. But I started watching that, and I started watching our audience change. Normally, every kid used to run around with debit cards. Everyone lived on debt. It didn't matter. Your kid got a debit card, he went out, did his thing. But those debit cards shrunk up. So this one summer we were out, and it was like 6 o'clock at night, and I'd sit there and watch kids starting to leave the Warped Tour. And I would say, why are you leaving? Aren't you having a good time? They're going, we're having a great time, but we can't afford to eat. And then you start thinking like, oh, and water, and because if the teenage brain, I learned a lot about the adolescent brain, that, if you have $20 in your hand, because parents took the debit cards away, they gave you $20 to go to the concert with, are you going to eat and get water, or are you going to buy another Day to Remember t-shirt? The t-shirt wins over. No matter how tough you are in the heat, around 6 o'clock you got tired and left. Now, my bad business model, I would sit out front and hand a kid $10 or $20 to go back inside and eat and watch the rest of the show. Not good business model in the long run. But so that's where we went to the meal packages, where parents could pre-buy a meal at many of the shows for their kids. I forced Live Nation, we went into a $3 maximum water, plus the free water with all the free water stations, because I said, there's a breaking point when kids will stop drinking water. $3 is probably the max they'll pay for a bottle, and that's a thing. And they were charging $4.50, so I subsidized that to make that work all these years. And then I was looking at going, you know what? I lose a lot of my audience when they're 19, 20 years old, because you guys all want to go to Okeechobee Festival, you want to go to Coachella, Bonnaroo, take Molly and dance in the dirt. No, but burn up your student loan money and go for it. But, I'm like, how do I support my independent music scene? My world, the independent music, the Fearlesses, the Hopelesses, that world I grew up. Let's get kids, because I was at a One Direction show, actually, in the 9th row. Yes, it wasn't Harry looking at all the little girls. They were looking down at the creepy old dude going, what's he in the middle of the crowd for? And I was looking around, and that was the day that 5 Seconds to Summer opened for him. And I watched, and it was probably about 98% females there. And I go, you know what? These girls right now are going to get turned on to live music, drums, bass, guitars. What can I do here? I need to get these kids out to these shows earlier. So and this economic side. And so it just was time. I said, you know what, let's go to this. It was a Father's Day, and we were playing Father's Day, which is tough on Warped Tour. So I made this one day. I said, bring your dads down, and to the Warped Tour on us. And then I just said, you know what, I think kids are okay with hanging out with their parents a little more now. The bad economy tended to bring parents back together, and families got used to doing stuff again. So going to a first music festival or a music festival together could get these kids into this scene earlier, 13, 14, because they want to go to festivals now. So why don't you come down with your parents the first time? And that's my wife again going, kids aren't going to go to the Warped, but their parents. And I go, you know what? I think it's going to be okay, because a lot of those parents now might have been to Warped Tour. They could have been at the first Warped Tour. And we did 700 parents. I don't think it affected the show. I don't think anyone felt uncomfortable. I think it gives us an extra, we did 700 parents average a day. It's an extra 1,400 eyes and things, just if someone passes out or help. The parents were pretty helpful. And the reverse effect, you always look at business, what happens then? Well, parents become walking ATM machines after 2 beers. Because at Warped Tour, you never sold beer. Their beer was never a thing. But the parents come down, and they're going to buy 2 beers. And if the amphitheaters, the Live Nation amphitheaters are charging $12 for a beer, what's another $20 for your kids to go buy another T-shirt? Mm-hmm. So merchandise sales have gone up for all the bands since we went to that program. I think, we will have that again this year. We're not pushing it so hard. This lineup we're coming is a little more core, a little more older. But, I will honor that, because I think kids should get turned on to live music. And it's no disrespect to One Direction, or I would love to get them turned on to the music, that I like, and the labels I like. And they're still buying CDs. They're still buying merchandise. And it is about, unfortunately, business in some ways. And I want to keep my friends' record labels in business. And while those kids are still really tuned in and want to get part of the lifestyle, it helps them out year round.
Yeah, sounds like a really smart move. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not really thought. It's more living in your environment and kind of reading between the notes all the time. Mm-hmm. I think that's how you have to kind of look. And people go, well, why are you still at the front gates every morning? And I go, it's all about getting them into the venue. It's totally reversed. The venues just staff up light and let people come in. I'm like, you better be ready for us. We're opening doors early. We set this show up in 2.5 hours every morning. Mm-hmm. And we're going to try to go earlier. Because if I can get every fan into Warped Tour before that first band, then my job is done. The day sets the tone. And then I kind of, on a beautiful day, maybe I can take a bike ride. Or on a really crappy weather day, mm-hmm. That's when I have to step into action and make those decisions to keep kids safe at a show. Yeah. When to start the show, stop the show. Operations are always great. Everyone in the background is doing their jobs. They're doing that. I don't have to worry about that. I worry about those unknowns that can come up.
Absolutely. So, this has been the longest running North American tour, which is pretty amazing in and of itself. So what do you attribute its success and longevity to?
I think we don't try to be more than we are. Mm-hmm. I mean, Warped was designed as a backyard party, to give you the feel of a backyard party. That's what we took it out as. And I think Warped, the success of Warped, we haven't changed it. We use the same stages. The SL250 stage we were the first people using those mm-hmm. in a traveling setting. I don't change it. I tweak it, but it still feels accessible. And that's why that going back to like 1995, I wanted to maybe step out of this business to become a school teacher. I was actually thinking that might be my next role. So to fill your head to kind of work through everything every day, I kind of look at Warped Tour now as potentially the largest classroom in America. We touch 500,000 people a summer. As in any classroom, 90% are going to do okay. They're going to come. For me, they're coming and running around in the sun, getting sunburned, having fun, meeting their favorite bands, hanging out with their friends. But that other 10% either looks at the stage and goes, I could be on that stage, or I can work in this business, or I can start a nonprofit, which I'm very proud of. We'll be talking about that tonight. There's so many nonprofits that have started in that parking lot. Brands have started in that parking lot, clothing brands. So we're trying to inspire people I'm trying to inspire people that you don't have to necessarily fit in. I've never fit in. I really haven't. I haven't tried. Every time I try to fit in, you end up getting hurt. So just keep doing what you do, and that's what the Warped Tour is. We're not more than what we are. And we are something for a select group, and it's a nice group, 500,000 people, and we touch a couple million more a year. We've traveled the world with it, but we're not more than, we're not more than advertised.
So we've had some we've actually sent interns to work with you since 2012, which is pretty awesome. What are some of the things that they've done while on tour to gain some real world experience?
Well, they've worked on stages. They've worked on, they've actually ran tents, some of our comedy tents and our acoustic basement tents. They've been out there as production people. They've worked on the site crew. Bertie, who I couldn't even tell you his real name, but his name's Bertie. I don't remember real names. You have to have a nickname, so I give everyone a nickname. But he had a nickname, Bertie, and he's going to be stage managing tonight. He's come back down here, but I know he's gone on to do great things, working with some of the bands that he's met on Warped Tour. We have office people that have come out, and social media. I've worked some videos, editing videos. So we try to find different roles that they've been involved in, and we've had some great ones. It's like everything. We've had some great ones go on, and a couple of them just went out and go, wow. Probably I don't want to go on the road. You have to go on the road to learn you don't want to be on the road. It's I always say the road, and the first day you go on the road is the day you have to figure out how to get off the road. And that's something I've always said my whole life. It's fun when you're in your 20s, being out on the road. You have no responsibility. You're out meeting friends. You're just seeing the world in a different way. But when you're in your 30s, you want to try to figure out how to transition off the road. Because if you're still doing this when you're in your 30s, the money starts getting pretty good, and making those transition off the road. And it's interesting seeing that. And then when you're 40s and 50s, the guys who are on the roads now, my age, I'll be 55 next week, are either they're paying 2 alimonies, they don't know what they're doing, they haven't, and all kinds of diabetes problems and things. So you got to try to get off the road a little bit by a certain point. So I like to say, work with people on that transition. I've transitioned a lot of people off the road in this business to help them get careers outside of being on the road.
That's great. So if these guys wanted to intern with you, what are some of the qualities that you would look for in them, or what skills are you looking for?
Basic lack of need for hygiene. It's going to be someone, you've got to be able to think on your feet, and get into that routine, because most of the time when you go into a touring setting, you're going to be asked to do a certain routine every day. Learn how to follow instructions, listen a little bit, and do each day, because that's the thing. Tours fall apart if those little things don't happen. That's why everyone always asks, can I come help? People always ask, can we come help for a couple days? Tours don't, it's awesome people want to help, but we can't give you a job that needs to be done the next day, because everyone just goes to their automatic positions. And you know what? Ultimately, just give a crap. That's the simple thing I say. Why I still can go on the road for 2 months a year. And I'll tell you a little story. 2 months a year, you go out on the Warped Tour with people that give a crap. Everyone gets out there. If you have this, what might be looked at the smallest job, your 10 by 10 tent to sell merchandise for this one band. Make that tent look good. Set it up, work, take care, and make that the best. So I watch all these kids dragging across the parking lots, crew guys, cases, dirt, just working. Everyone cares about what they're doing out there. Come off the road, and this is where the crazy old man comes out sometimes in me, I go to Subway, across the street from my office, and it was the $5 footlong promotion. You guys all know that? And which I think was an awesome promotion. It was kind of the tail end of the recession. People were hungry. You could split the sandwich in half. You could live on half of a Subway, for a couple days. And I'm watching this kid, and I'm in the back of the line, and people were asking for mayonnaise on their Subway. And I don't care if you charge $5 or $10 or $20. If you ask for mayonnaise, you want to have some mayonnaise on your sandwich. And every time he squirted the ball, it was like going, like it was empty, but he was pretending to put mayonnaise on people's sandwiches. And I'm like, wow, this great promotion is going to be ruined because this kid doesn't give a crap. So instead, I say stop. I yell it in the middle like I'm still on tour. Stop, stop. And I go, where's the manager? This guy is blowing because he doesn't give a crap. If you're doing something, just care. And being on tour, and that's what I look, I keep saying I can't go out on, the road, but, I look forward to watching people care for 2 months a year. Because in society, we are losing care for each other. We're losing care for how we act and in business in general.
That's great advice. So the last question I have before opening it up to these guys with questions.
Sure.
As you know, we pride ourselves in creativity here at Full Sail. We try to get our students to think more creatively. How do you define creativity?
An intern, and it kind of goes back to that intern thing. Being one of those guys, I've always been challenging business in general. I like when interns come to my company, and I always say as an intern, you have nothing to lose because smart, older business people need to learn. I think the old systems are so in place that they're fighting to keep them in place so they feel relevant. But I feel most relevant when I have my intern that says at the end goes, hey, can I take you to lunch? And there's this kid, Dakota, who now works for us. I keep saying he's a kid, but he hates when I say that, but he's been out of school a few years now. But he said he sat there and just watched, and he came to me at the end of his internship, says, Kevin, I can help this company fill little holes. And he had a whole list of things that he told me, it's not to disrespect you, but you're so busy, you don't see the ways that I can help you fix these holes. That's what I say a lot of times. If old business could just get out of the way of your generations, the world would be a better place. But there's this torn system right now of the old models trying to hang on to what's really relevant out there. So, it is that thing of, it's that there's no secret sauce to what you do. You try to stay, involved. I look at it as, I'm lucky, but I'm challenged every day because now they say that you can't get a job in America after 40. I read that, you're done. So now I just work out of fear and desperation. I just got to keep going because I can't retire.
Great. Well, how about you guys? Do you guys have any questions for Kevin? Feel free to, I see a hand over here and a hand over here and another one over here. Someone's going to bring the mic around real quick. We'll go with this young lady.
Hi, my name is Sydney. I'm in the music business program. I have been Warped Tour multiple times. It was my first concert, my first festival, and it was the best experience of my life. And I was just wondering, the Kevin Says stage, what was the story? How did that start?
Well, that started because one of the toughest words I had to learn in the world was no. Okay? I, come from a background that, I think it was always, trying to do the best. And I'd come across people sometimes after 2 or 3 extra beers I needed each night. No, you'd be out and every band sounds awesome. I don't know, none of you guys drink or anything, but it's amazing how so I'd be out, like hanging out, listening to music at a show, and I'd do, you're awesome, this is great, you can come down and play Warped Tour. Then I'd go to the next city, oh, you come down and play Warped Tour. Yeah, it's great, you're awesome, I met you at the grocery store, come on down and play Warped Tour. So these bands would all show up backstage, like at the morning of the show, and say, oh, Kevin says we get to play Warped Tour. Well, it was this point. So one day it was kind of funny. They said there was a little PA in this room, and they said, well, I guess we're out of space on the stage. You can play there. So that's what it became, the Kevin Says stage, because we had eventually grew it into the Kevin Says stage. We're actually retiring that this year, and it's called the Full Sail stage, because we're doing something new. We'll talk about it tonight. But, I tend to, I love music. I love live music, and still I go out a lot, whenever it's hard to go out in Los Angeles, you guys, to go see bands. It's really hard. But when I travel, I like to say, but that's where it came from. And Kevin Says, you can play there. So it became Kevin Says. Because usually they weren't advertised, they just kind of showed up.
Great question. We have another one here.
So, hi. My name is Daya Morgan. I'm in music production, and you were saying a lot about how your brand is super important, but you were also saying how you are super eclectic. How do you balance your I can do everything and I'm amazing at this and I should only do this? Where do you? Oh,
as a person or on the Warped Tour, like musically, or?
Just in general, like.
Well, in general,
both.
it's exciting. I mean, I take what I've been doing in music. We had the Taste of Chaos tour. And looking at Taste of Chaos, we formed in the mid-2000s during the emo era of music, and bands were heavy, and we went indoors with it and we took the Used and My Chemical Romance and Kill Switch Engage, and we went in and did arenas with it. I thought there maybe was a time to do this kind of indoor Warped Tour. Came Taste of Chaos. We did a one-off this year because I look at timing too and go, all those kids that came 15 and 16 are now 25 to 28 that love those bands, that kind of pocket. All those kids aren't going to festivals because they can't use student loan money to go to Bonnaroo, Coachella anymore. They have to pay their student loans back. They got jobs. They don't have the time. So let's relaunch the Taste of Chaos brand so these people can come one night and sing all the songs when they were happy, that made them happy. So it's knowing, and I juggle a lot. I really am now starting to do other things. We had a very successful launch of a surf skate brand, very like Warped Tour. It was all based on the surfer and skater lifestyle. We had Taylor Steele, Taylor Knox, Paul Rodriguez, a bunch of people. We had a brewery in California. We started it based on kind of that lifestyle model. And we kind of took our model of like when I helped start Hurley early on with Bob Hurley, we took this lifestyle and we built a brand. We just sold it to Miller Coors in 2.5 years. It was all lifestyle, great beer. None of us knew how to make beer, but we hired people that knew how. It was all about branding. So I'm really into the branding thing right now. I really like working on brands. We're launching a coconut water brand coming.
How do you know when you're expanding too much, and how do you know?
Oh, because that's my problem. You have to know how to put the brakes on. Yeah, that is a problem, and you'll be learning it your whole life if you're an entrepreneur or a thing. I get going, and I think sometimes even in my office, I come in and I'm talking about something new I'm working on, and they're like, what? You know? I'm trying to stay focused, but that's that brain that's kind of like it's challenging. You know, you should come to see my vegetable garden. Like most people can plant in a row. My wife goes, why can't you plant in a row? Because that would be the normal way to plant. I got grown everywhere. It's like Brussels sprouts with a bunch of cactus somewhere, and bulbs coming out of trees. But that's kind of how I live a little bit of my life. It's a frenetic life, but I'm trying to stay focused a little bit. Going fishing tomorrow. 2 days of fishing in Florida can get me back to focus. So that's what I'm doing the next 2 days.
That's excellent.
Hi, my name is Nick Lyles. I'm in the entertainment business program. I was wondering, how hard was it for you to orchestrate the sponsorship and the partnership with Journeys, or was that kind of like a no-brainer with the Vans deal as well?
It was interesting because at that point I think we were working with a company called Tilly's before, and Tilly's told us that they were going through some changes and they weren't going to do that. That Vans partnership works really well because I have this kind of a gentleman's and person's agreement that it's, I won't make shoes if they don't produce music festivals. So we work well together that way. However, this was probably the best kind of moment where we actually pulled together on something, where this opening happened. Journeys was involved in music. They did their couch tour and they did different things like that. And they were looking kind of maybe to trying to produce your own shoes and run a retail store becomes kind of sometimes you can disjoint. So it was that timing thing, and we did, someone at Vans, made a call, and they're based in Nashville, Journeys, and Kate and Allison work in Nashville. And it kind of came together very quick and organically. We put together a pitch. They were like, okay, we're going to jump in with this world. They want to support this music. This is the people that are buying shoes in their stores. We want to support you guys put on an awesome tuner. There's an opportunity to be there. And it's Jim Espa, who's their CEO, is that whole thing about mentors of old business. Walter Schoenfeld from Vans was that way with me. And I love just sitting and talking to Jim because he has a different perspective on the economy, on world trade, the fluctuations in dollars. I could talk about things like that with him. And they're really very passionate about their audience. I mean, when we're seeing that retail stores in general are struggling, you can read about PacSun, you could Zoomies, these kind of things. He's very smart and knows how to contract his brand, expand his brand when he needs to do it in this marketplace. And the average person that goes to the stores never knows that's going on, and that's the best way to do it. It's those retail stores that got to this whole thing of like deep discounting. Like it was constant. Like every 2 months they were running an ad. Why would you ever pay full price for anything? It's my problem with Groupon sometimes. Why would you pay full price for anything if everything's going to be on Groupon? And that's my fight sometimes. I think there is a value to live music. We're at this risk of potentially diminishing the value of live music when we've taken it out of selling CDs and selling things. There is a value to live music, and there's a value, and that's what I've tried to do with my tours, a value proposition. I think I'm bringing a good value to people. So I'm always torn with that too. But Journeys, it's really it's not. I'm not being that pitch guy for a sponsor, but it is a true. There's so and then partnership. And I feel that we can run things by Journeys. When we say they're real excited about the bands and they're decking out their stores, they don't have to do it as part of our deal. And did you ever get to go to that thing up in Nashville or any of the bands? Yeah, how awesome is that company to work for? Yeah. And he empowers his employees, which is cool. You want to empower your employees. You don't want to lecture to your employees. As I'm lecturing to you here. No, so, all right.
I know we have another question here. Thank you.
It's not working.
Try again.
Hello.
There we go.
Okay, Kevin. I know that.
Stop. What's your name?
It's Giovanna.
Giovanna, okay.
I know that the Warped Tour traveled to other countries. Like in 1999, you went to New Zealand, and you just traveled again in 2012 to London, if I'm not wrong. I want to know if you have any plans of bringing the Warped Tour to South America, like Brazil, because I'm from Brazil, and since like 2011, I know the Warped Tour is really famous out there.
Yeah. This is where you get into economic models of the music business, or just going to Brazil. When you go on Warped Tour in America, it's usually because a band's putting out a record. They also sell merchandise. They're building their whole scene. And then what ends up happening, when we were trying to go to Brazil, bands started to go down to Brazil. Some of the early punk bands, NoFX was one of the bands, started breaking that market open. Everyone started going to Brazil. Bands are going down there. But they don't have as much interest in building a long-term career down there. They're more interested in short-term cash. So I try to get all these bands, and I've tried to put it together with Brazil. We try to do South America, but I always say in music, it was punk rock, to take a step back to move forward. NoFX, Bad Religion, Pennywise would take a little less money to be able to put all these other bands with them. When we're on Warped Tour, even when I'm negotiating with all the bands to do these packages, some bands have to take a step back to move forward. And I haven't found that, because when going to South America, the bands are like, I can headline. I want to headline and get headlining money. They also convince the promoters down there that these bands deserve to stay in 5-star hotels. They travel first class or business class. And here they're driving around in a van, sleeping at Motel 6 or a friend's floor. But, it's just the model. It's very expensive to tour South America. And I'm not necessarily looking, I have to be a little smarter about trying to make a little money, because I used to tour around the world I'd never been anywhere when I started the Warped Tour. I had to get a passport to start the Warped Tour. So my problem was I would take money I made in the US and then travel the world with my punk rock friends and pay for a vacation. But it's really been tough in South America. Some of the larger festivals now, with like Lollapalooza is coming down there, but that ticket price is extremely high for that show.
So
10 or 12, yeah. I mean, but when you go to a club show or a venue show, they're very expensive. And we haven't kind of figured out that model of how to take 10 or 12 of those bands and deliver it still at a fair price. I don't know, it's strange. Right now I've just been focusing, we've gone to London, we went over to Europe and things, but right now I'm just trying to focus on your core brand. I think I needed to focus on that. We do talk every year. We've gone to Mexico a couple times. We've done a couple little things down there. It's never a no. Thank you.
Do we have another question? Great, thanks.
Oh, hello, there it goes. My name's Augusta. I'm a film student here, and my question to you is, what advice do you give for artist relations enthusiasts like myself who want to bridge the gap between my love of music and film? I want to get into working with festival somewhere to produce the content that draws in your art, crowds.
Well, one of the worlds is in the growth of content, okay? The idea that we're going to it used to be we would shoot awesome videos for bands and they would go on MTV or things. Well, that market's kind of gone away. The $100,000 videos become the $2,500 video. So the music space. But what is going on right now is through brands. The biggest thing that brands want is content. A lot of them. So if you're going to be making deals with brands to be involved in your festivals or tours, they're always looking for unique and special content. So a lot of them are starting their own departments, content creation departments, that they can send out their team with the brand's identity in mind when they send them out. Now, some of them will depend on us. Like if we do a deal, they'll say, cut us out a couple minute videos here or there. But a lot of them are starting to create their own content, unique content creation departments. So I think that's going to be the growth in the world here. There is the nice thing. You never thought there is so much programming. We are in a robust time. I think people are coming back into a way of actually watching series and TV and things. Now you can watch them through Hulu and Netflix and that world. So I think there's going to be a world out there, but it is content creation that way, at least in the music space right now. The long-form concert movies, are hit and miss. We've done a few. We had a great one. Last one I did was Stacey Peralta. No Room for Rock Stars, if you ever get a chance to see that. But the long-form concert movies are they're few and far between right now.
Very good. I think we have time for 2 more questions. So we'll take this one over here and
Hi.
one more.
Okay, it's working. My name's Madison Coviello, and I'm in the Digital Art and Design degree program. And my question is, when you're right out of college and you see a need in a brand, how do you as a college student pitch that idea to a brand that's already established and seemingly has everything already?
So you have some ideas for a brand. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and the first few of them you're going to have to give away. And I think it's sometimes very focused. If you go to professional conferences and volunteer, I know Full Sail recommends you to go to some of these things. You have to become a professional stalker. Okay, learning how to stalk in a good way, guys. This is what gets me in trouble. If Kevin Lyman says to stalk people, it's on Twitter now. But you identify who you need to show, and sometimes you have to corner them before they go up and speak at a panel. You don't want to be parking cars, and you create that and be willing to take that chance to have your first idea stolen, okay? But if you can build that personal relationship, and I always say this is a way to kind of do it, okay? If you want to meet and you've got someone, figure out who it is. You can find out anything online, who runs what companies, who's running what departments. Figure out where they might be at a professional conference or something. Find out something completely wrong, nothing about the business with them, nothing about their business, because the last thing we ever want to talk about is our business. We'll talk about it here and stuff. The best way to strike up that relationship, because if you wanted to strike up a relationship, and I've given you a clue, what would you want to talk to me about in Florida? Fishing, all right? So if you were back there and something and you wanted to be Kevin Lyman, pitch him an idea, you would say, okay, I'll volunteer to do this or help out here. Take that moment, talk about fishing, opens the door to talk about your profession. It's a start. It's just different ways, because it's crazy how you guys apply for jobs. It's so sad that you have to put everything online. It goes into this vast sea of just online. I was thinking a while back, if I ever had to do anything where it was just not meeting people face to face, if I had to put my request to Walter Schoenfeld online that first time with Vans, but that's when he was interviewing me for a job, but in skating, but I was able to pitch my brand. Would I ever be able to do that now? And we'll leave, I think we're about time to wrap up, but I'm going to leave it with this. You have to learn how to fail. I think we've bred out of you guys so much that chance to fail. I see that starting with kids in kindergarten now. It's like, where are you going to go to school? You have to succeed, succeed, succeed. I'm where I'm at because I was willing to fail. And it's okay to fail. You learn from your failures and you move on. So
That's great advice. So do we have time for one more question? I think so. We have one right here. This is our last question. Thank you.
All right, my name's Kristen Applegate, and I'm in the music business program. And I was just wondering, as a concert promoter, what did you find was your biggest obstacle getting into the industry, and how did you overcome it?
Well, like I said, I kind of accidentally fell into it. They needed someone, but I had done all that work in school. And I guess we can leave it on this, that experience, because I do have people that come to me and say, going to school, it's not, utilize your time wisely here. I didn't know I was utilizing my time wisely for my future when I was in school, but I was learning this. I was learning how to put on concerts. I was learning how to put on events through school. Get involved here as much as you can. Utilize your time more, because I've talked to students here. Some people, say, "Oh gosh, I got debt or this or that," and I'm saying, and then I come here and meet students who have really excelled in that program and used every opportunity when you're here. You're building your brand. And that's sadly I say now, because in bands, whoever thought you were, if you're an artist, you start building your brand at a younger age now. Everything you're doing online, everything you're doing social, is you're starting to work on your brand. So you're working on your brand while you're here, and that brand will carry through life for you. So, think about it now. If you're an artist, I always say with a band, sit in that van and think, you're now a brand. If you want to do more and play in a party or something, that's cool. But if you want to go on, you have to start thinking about yourself as who's going to be the CEO of our brand? Who's this chief information officer every day that's going to keep our social media up? Who's the chief financial officer? Because we have to keep books now because taxes are much more involved in music than they used to be. We sign receipts at a different level. And start to look at this and go, are we forming our board of directors here? And that's the band. And then you start bringing in your advisors and you bring in people. And as an individual, you're starting to work on your brand while you're in school at Full Sail. You're starting to work on your identity. So take every opportunity you can to start building that so you have a better calling card when you go out into the world. We have an intern right now, and it was really sketchy because people were like, oh my God, she's coming out. She used to come to everything I spoke at and everything. And we gave her a chance. And there was this whole thing, oh my God, she's willing to move out from Wisconsin and put in her time in my office and do this thing. And she's really excelling, and she's getting job opportunities now. I think she's been investing in her brand since she was 12. Her mom would bring her to some of the things I'd speak at and things. She kind of knew that thing. But you're not too late. You just get involved, because if you're here just to waste your time, you're going to end up with a big debt. If you think that someone's going to walk in and hand you a job in this world, you're not. It's going to take patience. It's going to take perseverance. And when you get the foot to the door, just keep going through it. So thank you.
That is amazing advice. Thank you, Kevin. So I have one quick announcement before we thank everyone for coming. You have a big announcement happening today here at Full Sail.
And hopefully you guys are going to come tonight. It should be a lot of fun. It's going to be, we got some great bands playing tonight that will be playing Warped Tour. This is the first time, and it was great. I was at the end of last summer, with our relationship, I was telling I go, hey, why don't we try to, I had been to your facilities. I looked around. I'm always blown away when I come down here. I go, maybe we could make this work. So this is the end of 8 months or 7 months of discussions. Tonight we're doing it. Doors are at 5:30.
Yep.
And we got some bands playing. We've got some surprises. I know that it's funny in the world of social media. You can't help but get that's only part of the lineup got leaked, if you're interested. There are going to be many surprises tonight, and hopefully you guys can make it. It's good. And we walk in today, and your facility, it's like all of a sudden, and I always say, if the time to get out of this business is the time you don't get goosebumps, all right? I get goosebumps every day I open the show. I got goosebumps when I walked in there today because I just go, wow, man, someone gave a crap to help us make this happen.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys.
Yeah, so this is going to happen over in the Full Sail Live venue. It is a ticketed event, but they've told me that if you guys show up and you guys, they're going to have a standby section. So we hope that you guys will show up, and if there's space for you, you're more than welcome to come in. But we really want to thank you guys for coming today, and of course thank Kevin for being our amazing guest. Have a great day.
And I know that. Thank you. And I know I dragged 303 down here, is coming in to teach down here, so that's another little surprise that they weren't on that first leak. So they asked me if can they speak on campus since they're going to be hanging. I'm taking them fishing with me, so we're going to be hanging out for a couple of days. So they're going to come in and I know speak here later today.
Yeah. So thank you guys. Have a good day.